Well, thank you guys again for taking the time. My community, love you guys. So pumped to be able to be here and have an opportunity to speak with Puerto Rico Lacrosse with Miguel and Jose uh, on the line, I guess, on Zoom with us. And what I'm going to do is just make sure for anyone who is hopping on this episode, I feel so fortunate for lacrosse. It's been such a strong foundation for me and given me the ability to rise and be successful time and time again. No matter what's going on in my life, I can relate to a story from my youth or college experience. And I truly believe that's why I continue to shoot for the stars and actually catch some of them. So the intention of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute is to speak with other individuals who love lacrosse, have a passion for it, and have used it to be successful in their business life and lacrosse life, and to learn their story. So that's why we have Miguel and Jose today. And I'm going to start just by asking you two, how did you guys get involved in lacrosse in the first place, and really how did this passion develop?
Sure, Jose, I can start with this question. So Ryan, again, thanks for having us. We're extremely blessed to be on and very happy to share our stories. So I grew up in Queens, New York, and growing up, Puerto Rican lacrosse is not a sport that we play typically. It's usually baseball is exactly what we play. So I played baseball growing up my whole life, and the thing that was crazy was while living in Queens, I was around like maybe 11 or 12, Hofstra would be frequently on playing lacrosse, and I would tune in, and I remember watching it. So at a young age, I knew what the sport was, but it wasn't an opportunity that was provided to me living in Queens. It wasn't until I was about 13, 14, I moved out to Long Island, and my football coach was a captain at Bucknell, and he said, look, Miguel, you're athletic, you're pretty fast. Do you want to give lacrosse a try? And if by doing that, it meant that I'd have to give up baseball. So when my dad found out that I wanted to give up baseball for lacrosse, he kind of had like a similar reaction that Jose is going to share with you. He wasn't disappointed, but he was like, okay, I had no idea what lacrosse is. He thought it was Quidditch. He thought it was like some Harry Potter weird game. It looks funny from a foreigner, like lacrosse looks funny, but I gave up baseball because lacrosse is fast paced. I love the contact that football provided, and lacrosse gives you that. And my football coach was going to be my coach again. So I said, you know what, I'll give it a shot. And I fell in love with the sport immediately. But it wasn't until I was provided that opportunity in Long Island. And about a year and a half into it, I got better, and I played all throughout high school, and I played in college as well, Liberty University. So that's how I was introduced to the game. And Long Island is a hotbed for lacrosse. So I got taught up pretty well, and I played some really good competition. And that's how I was introduced to the game.
Awesome. Thanks, Miguel. And Jose, what about yourself?
Well, my story is a little bit different than Miguel's. And quite honestly, I grew up seeing lacrosse being played. And about the age that I started getting interested in more of the athletics, I went more the baseball and wrestling route. And it wasn't until later in my life, my oldest, who's now 20, when he was in high school, he had picked up a neighbor's stick, and he was coming home practicing and doing the wall ball and so forth. And so that got us kind of interested into what this new sport was all about. For me, it was kind of revisiting it. I had retired military, and when I finished 26 years, I was looking for a new career switch. And so his athletic development prompted me to get more involved into, I shoot photography. So I got more into the sports side of the house. And before long, I was realizing that the passion and the excitement of watching lacrosse conveyed not only through watching it live, but it was coming through on the images. And so I quickly, I mean, when I tell you quickly, it is like no other sport in front of my lens. So he developed a great technique, great ability, went on, finished high school, which that led my youngest one to start developing the sport as well. So in late 2015, he was all in. We were going up and down the East Coast, tournaments and what have you, clinics and so forth. And he mentioned to me that, was I aware that Puerto Rico had a lacrosse team? Now you can just imagine that that pause and that look of disbelief. But the tail end of it, it was enough for me to get excited about the potential there.
Oh, wow.
Reached out to Puerto Rico Lacrosse, which at the time was just, starting out. Explained what I was hoping to bring to the table, and I was graciously welcomed on board. So ever since then, that's been my non-playing but mad following fan story of how I got involved with lacrosse.
Well, that's really cool. And it sounds like at the end of the day, it's love of family or love of the game. It's a whole family affair when you're playing lacrosse, because quickly when you're a young guy or gal, you're driven around by your parents to practice most often, and parents really seem to like lacrosse much more than, in my experience, than baseball. I've played a ton of baseball as well. But that's cool. You get that experience as well. For each of you, what's your pinnacle experience that you've had, whether it was playing, coaching, or just involved with Puerto Rico lacrosse? What's your pinnacle moment that you think of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell this to Jose when I share this. Puerto Rico lacrosse, a lot of the stuff we do, we're focused. We have threefold. We have a women's national team, a men's national team with different age groups, and then we have island development. And I always tell Jose, and I share this with anybody. The most fulfilling moments for me in lacrosse. I've won conference championships at the collegiate level. We've won big games. We beat big name schools. But for me, seeing the faces of the kids, of the youth in Puerto Rico for the first time, given the opportunity to play lacrosse, it's incredible. And I always break down in the car with my dad. I'm like, I can't believe I'm on this journey of introducing a lacrosse game to my island, my culture, my people. And, for me, lacrosse has changed my life drastically. And the fact, like I was mentioning earlier, that I'm still doing it at 28, it was because I was given the opportunity. And that's the same thing I wanted to give to the kids of the island. So one of my pinnacle moments was last March. Angel Valentin, another coach within the organization, went with me, and we went to do a clinic at a school outside of San Juan in Carolina. And we did a clinic for about 120 kids who've never played before. And so many things went wrong going into that clinic. The net we brought didn't have, it was missing pieces, so we couldn't use that. Thank God we had little soccer goals, so we had to roll with that.
Yeah.
Another clinician who was supposed to be there couldn't make it last minute, and I had to get Angels. But all to say, it ended up coming together because of the love of the game, the love of lacrosse, and seeing these kids saying, please come back. We want to play this again. Thank you for the opportunity. Those are the moments that I love the most. And I know Jose will probably share the same sentiments.
Yeah, it's again, obviously it would sound like scripted or perhaps that we're going to speak strictly on Puerto Rico lacrosse, but it's true. It is a passion. There are so many pinnacles. When I started talking to these guys in 2015-16, there was no way of imagining that in 2020 that we would still be going hard and strong over this organization. Now, with that being said, we have players that span from Puerto Rico all throughout the United States that participate. We have clinicians that are spread out as well. But I think it's hard to pinpoint one specific moment or pinnacle, if you will, simply because it's like a combination of all. I can tell you the super joy from an organization that had just started out, watching the men's 2018 national championship, place 8th in the world, and we're sitting back and watching this like pinch me type of thing, and then follow it up with the women's 2019 performance, placing 9th. We were on a roll when it came to the national teams, and we're expecting to continue doing down that process from the athlete's point of view. But when Miguel mentioned, the clinics in Puerto Rico, we do, I can't even imagine to log the hours, but the amount of planning that goes into those is incredible, right? So
Yeah.
when you're actually there and you're in 102-degree weather, and like Miguel said, nothing seems to be going as planned, even though we were sitting there for hours on end. Um,
Yeah.
those individual pinnacles of that one individual child picking up a stick, whether it be donated sticks or Sankofa clinicians, but seeing their eyes are individual pinnacles. But I'm going to leave it with this one last mention, that we were fortunate enough that we were able to take those national teams and those exceptional talented athletes and then take them to the island. And crossing those two pathways is truly when the organization can sit back and go, wow, like that's the magic. It's not the scoreboard, and it's not the glam and the supporters or followers. It's just that moment when those two entities meet. So.
Wow. And was that a goal for you guys to bring the national team to the island and just have the team do coaching and just speaking with the youth, or how did that end up happening?
So when this all first started, and we started it in 2015, we didn't know which way the organization was going to grow faster, whether it was going to be from the national teams down or from the grassroots levels up. And it kind of met in the middle. Both teams were progressing at the same way. So to your question, that was always a plan. And the 2019 U19 women's team was the first time that a team has truly fulfilled our mission by bringing those athletes, and some of them live on the island, some of them don't, but to the island to meet the kids, because our purpose was to give these kids role models. Say, look, there's players like you who look exactly like you, who come from the same background, who can play lacrosse at a high level, and these are going to be your role models. And that team truly met our dream. So yeah, that was always our plan. It's going to be continued our plan. Hopefully with this COVID restrictions, we don't know what's going to go on, but we do have another planned trip with our men's U19 team. We don't know if it's going to happen, but going forward for every team, that's exactly our goal, is to mesh and kind of build a bridge between the island and our players in the U.S.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the interesting dynamic there is also the mission of Puerto Rico Lacrosse, right? So we want to promote those athletes' development. We want to promote the youth development. But one of the, hardcore rocks, if you will, we also have to introduce it as a culture, because of the fact that you said you played baseball before. That is one of the primary sports in Puerto Rico. Basketball, boxing, and so you see those developed sports on the island, and it's a pastime, right? And so especially in the initial years, just bringing the word lacrosse, it's undefined in Puerto Rico. So you have to, the organizations had to get very creative. And one of those assets and tools that we've had is actually bringing those athletes, where they're superstars in the States in their own respect. When they come to the island and they're mentoring that youth, that superstar status magnifies tenfold, because of the fact that they're so appreciative to see this individual athlete coming to them and giving them one-on-one training. So
that is so cool. Can you guys share a little bit more for anyone that's not familiar with the international game and how these teams work, how they're combined, whether it's kids in the States or internationally, and what the tournament looks like, just to give us a little bit more insight?
Jose, you want to take that question?
Sure. It's an interesting dynamic. So the international game, obviously, it's organized by World Lacrosse. The members of World Lacrosse, once a nation has established and applied to get into membership, they'll spend a period of time as an associate member, and then eventually put in and hopefully get voted on for a full member. So you have representatives from all around the world. Examples are out there galore. Obviously, the most common is USA, right? So everybody is very familiar with that, with the Paul Rabels and so forth, and their great performance at the last World Championships, right? But then you have stories out there that don't always make the media, such as Kenya Lacrosse, right? So you have an organization that is basically building a program from the ground level up. The sponsorship is not as robust, but the exposure and the beauty of World Lacrosse is that it brings all these countries together, and on the field, everybody's an equal. Everybody's there demonstrating their passion and talent for lacrosse. And so, you know, it's not much different, because some of the rules vary from international play to what we're more familiar with, collegiate level or high school level. But it's essentially an organization that promotes, you know, growing the game of lacrosse. But I can tell you that probably the key factor in World Lacrosse is they're seeking teams that are promoting that development of lacrosse in their respective countries. It's not so much about, you know, the airtime or the popularity time. It's about what you're doing and how involved you are. And so, you know, the dynamics have gotten a little bit more stringent over the years. We fall under now what they call the Pan American Lacrosse Association, PALA. And so what they established in 2018 moving forward is that, wow, we have a lot of teams that are potentially going to be showing up here. So they started building some of these subgroups, if you will, or sub-entities. And so Puerto Rico fell under the Pan American Lacrosse Association. And prior to any world championship, the teams have to go out there and qualify in order to appear at the World Championship. So it's almost a second tier of training. All said and done, though, it's all about growing the game in your respective country.
That is so cool. And so it sounds like you guys joined on board the Puerto Rico Lacrosse since it was already going. I know, Miguel, I think I saw your president, or did you guys start it all up?
Yeah, so I was one of the co-founders. Another
wow.
founder was a teammate from Liberty, who's Nate Lowmaster. He's no longer with the organization, but Jose was joined on like a year after we started, and that's kind of like how we got going. The way that we started was, you know, Nate gave me a call. Why doesn't Puerto Rico have a lacrosse team in a nutshell? And then we started with a website, started with social media, and everything kind of snowballed. And when Jose joined on, he just exponentially. A lot of people don't know Jose, but my nickname for him is the Wizard of Oz, because he's always behind the scenes doing so much for the organization. And no one really knows him, but people don't realize how much he propels this organization, how much he does. So once he joined on board, our social media just started growing, and we started getting a lot of more followers. And actually, we have families from all over the place reaching out because of how well we've been able to reach them through social media.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm the current president. Jose's the vice president, and a lot of other roles. So he's like the whole package, Jose. But Jose, you want to add to that?
No,
don't be humble.
No, I mean it. You know, Miguel and I have I don't want to say unorthodox, because it's now become orthodox. It's very common. There's not a single day that goes by that Miguel's doesn't receive a call from me, or I don't receive a call from him. And I'm talking, obviously, you know, me being 28, Miguel being 28, we're the same age. So we share a lot of the common bonds, right? A lot of the social aspect of it. So a lot of the calls are about sometimes complete nonsense, because quite frankly, we'll discuss something that nobody else would spend 2 minutes talking about, but we'll sit there and debate it or discuss it. And that has matured our relationship in the sense that undeniable trust goes both ways. You know, there's nothing that most events or most occurrences for Puerto Rico Lacrosse, we'll see Miguel's eyes and then he'll forward it, or vice versa. But I can't recall of another period in time when these decisions that really truly make a difference or an impact. I trust Miguel so much that I could say, you know, I didn't even need to see that, because he knows me so well, and vice versa. But, you know, it just aligned. Like I said, you know, the chances of somebody that didn't grow up playing lacrosse joining an organization that was all about lacrosse and then seeing the dynamics work through it. We've had so many bumps in the road that, quite frankly, it's just meant to be. And we're just going to keep pressing forward as best as we can, getting that message out.
That's awesome. What would you say is your guys' biggest challenge right now?
You know what? I have to, our biggest challenge, and this is all relative because of all the things that's going on in the world. Our biggest challenge right now is getting to the island. You know, our main mission is to get to the island, to continue growing the game there. And we've made so much momentum and so much progress the past couple of years. So again, relative, it's been disappointment that we can't get there right now because of what's going on, but we understand why, and we understand that there's a process, and you know, what's going on is serious. But kudos to our organization staff, our coaches, our volunteers who do this for the love of the game, for the love of our people. No one in our organization gets paid. So the fact that we've been able to have a meeting once a month with all our coaches, with all our staff, discussing what we're going to do once these restrictions are lifted, what we're going to do once we're allowed to do what our mission calls us to do, has been completely incredible, because 2020 for everybody has been difficult. But I can honestly say I am so honored to be a part of Puerto Rico Lacrosse because of the volunteer hours that our volunteers have put in, that I know once this is all over, we're going to hit the ground running. And it has been a tremendous time to be a part of this organization, that we can say that we've been growing during this difficult time. Is something that I'm honestly blessed and floored to say. So that's been our biggest challenge as of recently. But it's a little easier when you have a good staff around you and people who are willing to put in the time that is unpaid. So I don't really have, I don't know, Jose, if that answers the question, but a lot of stuff doesn't feel challenging right now.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you face the fact that people are wanting to get back on the field, obviously the players and the coaches, right? And some of those things are out of our control. So that's been a sort of an obstacle. We had a planned event back in May, which was postponed, the Heritage Cup. Like Miguel said, getting to the island. And, you know, the funny thing about it is that, you know, wealth and finances, I guess, is defined by your own definition, right? Because for the organization, a nonprofit organization, when I tell you, Miguel says, you know, none of us are paid, and that's legitimate. There's not even a stipend. There's not a salary. There's nothing to supplement. Not one single cent goes into our pockets. You know, the donations and contributions or anything that we may make as far as profit of sales goes right back into the organization, goes to cover the, as I say, the lights, our website, the ability to get stuff shipped to Puerto Rico. And then on top of that is maintaining the momentum and the enthusiasm, because it's quite frankly, it's very easy, you know, just at this point, not to be creative or not to be able to kind of reach out to your audience without any content. But our fans are super fans. And when the organization, not so much the growth of lacrosse, but when the organization has pitched forward and said, hey, we want to do a small fundraiser for the victims of Maria, or we want to do a fundraiser for the victims of the, you know, the magnitude of earthquakes that occurred in Puerto Rico in succession, they didn't hesitate. And so it allows our organization to slowly grow. You know, we're not an open faucet. We're a dripping faucet. But that dripping faucet eventually is going to cause some damage, you know? It is definitely our momentum, and it's not because of Miguel and I. It is strictly because of the volunteers extending from our national teams committee through the women's development, through the men's national development, island development. It is all those volunteers at a moment's notice when we say, hey, we need to have a meeting to discuss something. You know, nobody's finding excuses. Nobody's finding I don't have proper internet connections. You know, it's always about the time. And let me tell you, the ideal times to have a meeting, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Not Puerto Rico Lacrosse. We choose to do meetings at sometimes 8 or 9 o'clock at night and last until 10, where it's almost bedtime. We're committed, but we're only committed because we have the backbone of the rest of the volunteers.
I sense the passion for not only you two, but for the entire organization. And I think you're able to accomplish so much. When we look at leaders like you two, to be able to get, how many people do you have involved in the organization as a whole? If we think about kids, coaches, staff, can you give me a little bit of insight there and how many people are really involved?
If you started looking at the amount of youth that has been to our clinics, so we started with clinics in Cabo Rojo under a organization that is owned by Elliot Hernandez. He's one of our biggest assets there on the island in support of Puerto Rico Lacrosse. And his summer camps affected 250 plus per year, right? So you're looking at a range, a rough estimate, maybe 300 to 500 kids at least that have attended those clinics, right? Volunteer-wise, you're looking at about, and this isn't even talking about the coaching staff. So the behind the scenes, when we have our committees, our Island Development Committee, you add that onto the miscellaneous other committees that we've had, you're looking at another magnitude about 20 to 30 volunteers on and off, right? And then you start bringing on the coaches. Our coaches tend to rotate somewhat, but you know, we've been blessed with individuals that do not put their career before their passion to teach. And so we have a robust staff on the men's national team, the senior team. So there's 4 coaches there, led by John Reba. And then you move over to the it's U19, but because they moved it, it's now U20. So you have 4 individuals there, led by Shell Mowry. Then you have the women's side of the house, which we announced their coaching staff. So they have a robust team of 10 total, led by Natalie Bermudez. And then you have a newly accepted position for the U19 women's side, Sofia Lugo. So all in all, I would say we have between 50 and 75 volunteers, and then the exposure of the kids. And don't dismiss the parents, because they're a big part of that too. And so you had a couple another 100 there. So it's growing. We're that dripping faucet, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Miguel, did you anticipate this would get so big within 5 years?
You know, I don't want to seem like super confident in this answer, but I knew that if we put in the hard work, I didn't know where we were going to end up, but I knew that with constant hard work and dedication, you know, I've seen this in other aspects of my life, that this was going to be a successful program. And, you know, one of our pillars within Puerto Rico Lacrosse, there's 3 of them. It's hope, passion, serve. And for us, hope is something that obviously you're hoping for, you're hoping it's going to happen. But something that I preach within our organization is that, you know, we know it's going to happen. We know that what our end goal is going to happen as long as we continue to put the hard work in. So I'm never satisfied. Our volunteers are never satisfied. So we're happy with where we are, but we know that we want to be exponentially further in our progress. And we have an 8-year business plan where we want, you know, schools on the island where it's specifically just lacrosse academies, just like they do for baseball. So we have exponential goals. You know, so in a sense, I knew we were going to be here as long as we just had people with pure hearts who were working for the mission.
Well, it sounds like you have that, and it sounds like, I think it's so important that you highlighted there's a business plan. There's a strategy and a goal in place. There's that lighthouse, if you will, that's always going to be there through thick and thin, and you're going towards that. And the ability to have that, in my mind, that's what leadership is. The servant leader goes and he finds other people in the organization and in the community that have a similar passion, whether it's for their own kids or for the youth or impoverished areas. And to be able to have this vision of actually schools on the island all focused on lacrosse. Is that the main goal right now for 8 years out, or can you share a few of the other goals that you guys are thinking about?
So, Jose, I'm just gonna, and then I'll maybe finish this. You know, one of the other goals that we have is there's this big games in Puerto Rico called La Justas, and just in a nutshell, it's basically a mini Olympics for all the universities in Puerto Rico. And believe it or not, there's a lot of them. And it's pretty cool because it goes on for a couple of weeks. And one of our first events was to have, it was 2016, and we had a little tent outside of this massive stadium in Mayagüez, which is the southwest corner of the island. And it was the finals of the competition. They compete in different track competitions. So it's like sprinting, 4x2. They also have volleyball, basketball tournaments with all the teams of the colleges. Our vision was that one day we were going to be having teams compete in that event. And our U19 team was able to practice in that stadium. So for us, it was like our first year, we had a 5x5 patch of grass outside the stadium. Now our girls have access to practice in the stadium. And further on, we want every university to have a collegiate lacrosse team, because we want to build the economy in Puerto Rico. We want to give our part to, help build that up. And a lot of the issues that Puerto Rico are facing right now is that a lot of our people, our population is dwindling because they're leaving the island because of so many, resources that are dwindling. So if we can give back in sport and continue to grow our universities, to continue to grow our high schools there athletic-wise, and give them a new opportunity with lacrosse, that's our goal. We want to see lacrosse in every school. We want every kid in the island to have the opportunity to play this game. And I can go on and on. There's so many benefits to lacrosse. And it's just like I was telling you earlier, there's so many networking opportunities. And just being on this call with you is because of lacrosse. So I can imagine the plethora of opportunities that these kids can have just by being able to play the game. Our goal, in a nutshell, is to have every kid in the island be able to afford the game, be able to have the opportunity to play, and then eventually stay on the island in our universities, because they'll have the opportunity to play at the collegiate level in Puerto Rico. So,
yeah, and a little bit, to touch on Miguel, it's like part of that 8-year plan is also to develop the sport in the sense that, we are able to bring the resources of our own athletes to Puerto Rico and let the youth kind of witness it, but we have yet been able to get anything under Puerto Rico Lacrosse's umbrella as far as a competition. So we also strive to build those team sports or those clubs so that we can at least start introducing the competitive side. And I think that will bring furthermore the exposure of lacrosse. I mean, in a perfect world, we're getting, the professional leagues that are playing lacrosse across the United States to perhaps take a flight over to Puerto Rico and play. I won't call out the exact, organizations, but those, they're more of the premier players that we're exposed to that we would love to see Puerto Rico play and come out. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, cool guys. How can we support you and Puerto Rico Lacrosse?
Well, for us, I mean, the biggest thing is word of mouth. So we don't pay for advertisement. We don't send out, anything that is costing the organization anything undue cost. And so for us, our growth has been strictly word of mouth. 9 times out of 10, when we stop any of our players or our coaches and say, well, how did you even hear about Puerto Rico Lacrosse? It's either social media or somebody saw a post and forwarded it to them. So by you bringing us on and discussing it, by you sharing this on your live, and we will do as well. I hope that everybody that is unaware of Puerto Rico Lacrosse has that same epiphany as I did when my son told me, do you know if Puerto Rico has a lacrosse team? It was that second that drove me to the computer to actually looking it up. And I hope that that's what does it, because that's what's going to bring us our future players and future supporters. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would just follow those sentiments. Join our calls, follow us on the various social medias. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And Ryan, just like how we met through networking, I believe in the power of networking. You don't have to just donate your funds to us. Whether you have a shoe company, a shoelace company, we will find a way to collaborate that we can help out whoever is out there. And I'm sure we could find a way to help you guys, allow you guys to help us out in any way. So I think we're open arms, right, Jose? It doesn't matter what walk of life you're at. You don't have to be Puerto Rican. We're just looking to grow the game. So.
Ryan, we, just like your encounter with Miguel, we proudly say that, we don't have a team that typically answers or auto replies our emails or messages. You're primarily looking at the 2 individuals here. So if you send out an email, it doesn't matter if it's, a 10-year-old that just gives me 1 sentence question. we reply and we take pride in doing so, that we make sure that you get the information you're seeking. So
awesome. Well, that's so cool, guys. Again, thank you for your time. I'm going to go ahead and just end this live real quick if I can figure it out without shutting it down completely. And then we'll go ahead and just chat a little bit more if I can. But such a huge call and great opportunity.
thank you as well.
I think I'm just going to end it. And if you guys can pop back in, then we'll be able to go and get rid of the live. So thank you all for listening. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, guys.